Welcome to Cabral House Call. I'm Stephen Cabral, board certified naturopathic doctor, and today on a Total Wellness Tuesday, I'm back to answer your questions on all things health, wellness, weight loss, and anti-aging. So to get started for our first question, we're going to answer a question from... Alright, so Mark asks, why do I get lightheaded or dizzy when I stand? So this is something that I'm really familiar with, and one of the reasons is I went through this for like 5 or 6 or 7 years, and no one can really tell me like why I got lightheaded when I would stand up, or I would like just move too fast or turn my head too fast or whatever it might be. And so the big thing is what we were talking about earlier today on the Cabral concept is those sodium levels or the electrolyte levels in your blood pressure balance. So one of the tests or procedures that I do that you can do right at home, I do this in office in my Boston practice, is I have someone do orthostatic-based blood pressure testing. So it's almost like a tilt table test. What I'm having them do is I'm having them lie down on their back. I'm taking their blood pressure after I do just a regular seated one. And then what I have them do after lying for about a minute or two is they're gonna stand up and I take their blood pressure again and I see if there's actually a drop in blood pressure or a rise in blood pressure. And if there's a rise, how large is that rise? It tells me so much information, it's unbelievable, and I can't believe that more practitioners really aren't using this in their practice, or just people right at home. And the reason is, if you have a dramatic spike in blood pressure from lying to standing, which it should really just be right around maybe like 12 points or less on your systolic, diastolic raise, and your heart rate as well shouldn't be a big jump as well, that shows a greater stress response in your body from just doing something like lying to standing. Like that shouldn't be a huge stress in your body, but it is for some people. Now the opposite is also true. If you go from lying to standing, you're showing that the blood is not doing a great job of pumping back up from the lower body to the upper body, and you kind of get that lightheaded or dizzy based feeling. So what is the best thing to do? Well, the best thing to do, of course, is to work on those cortisol, HPA axis, basically adrenal based axis, to improve your overall energy balance. And then in the short term, what could you do is you could add a little bit of sea salt or good natural sodium, celery based juices, and cabbage and those types of things as well for natural sodium. But of course, just adding sea salt temporarily can start to add a little bit more minerals to your system. I just like overall electrolytes, but sodium of course will help with this. So that's the best part. That's the first start. Now it could be from being low blood sugar level, it could be from a bunch of different things, but explore this first, because I've seen this be, in the majority of cases, this is the issue, and it was certainly the issue with myself as well. Next question. All right, so Sue asks, what is my favorite type of sea salt? So since we're talking about sea salt and sodium and these types of things, people just ask, do you like this sea salt? Do you like this sea salt? So basically what we're just saying is, what are my favorite types? And what I'm looking at is for obviously an all-natural sea salt. You can't really classify as a sea salt as organic, because you're not doing organic-based farming like that. This is just natural sea salt that a lot of times is just from 10,000-year-old salt beds. So what do I look for? I'm looking for a natural-based brand. So I'm going to break this down a couple different ways, because a lot of people don't talk about this specifically. You can get sea salt from land. So look at real salt, it's called, and I believe it's from Utah in the United States. So real salt is called real, R-E-A-L, and it's kind of, I don't know, copyrighted or whatever. It doesn't mean real salt. It's actually, that's the name of the brand. And that's a really nice shaker bottle. People love this brand because it's micronized. It's really fine crystals that comes out almost just like regular salt that you're used to, table salt. So that's what a lot of times I recommend to start. It also comes from, a salt bed in Utah. And another thing about this, it has that little pink texture, really nice salt as well. So then there's two others that I do recommend. One is Celtic sea salt. That is, I think, more of the Ireland-based sea salt. Again, just another spot that they're getting natural sea salt from. And the third one is Himalayan sea salt, and Himalayan being from the Himalayas, and you can get that. That's typically called a pink salt as well, that people call it. The Celtic salt, or the Celtic salt, it being gray. Now you can get I'm going to call it Celtic because that's what I call it, a Celtic based sea salt, and it's gray. So sometimes people just don't like the gray color, but what I found is that I think it's called Flower of the Sea, the Celtic brand, is a really strong sea salt. So it's like really potent. And if you're not ready to go there yet, now some people love it. Meaning like if your sodium levels are low, your adrenals are kind of depleted, your thyroid's kind of depleted, people love this type of sea salt because it's so potent. But I'm more of the school of thought that start with a real salt or start with a Himalayan salt. Just make sure you're not, I mean, they sell sea salt from China. So just make sure that you're getting a more natural based salt and that it actually comes from that location where they're supposed to be mining it from, essentially. So those are my 3 favorite brands: real salt, Celtic sea salt, and Himalayan salt. Next question. All right, so Maria from New Zealand asks, I've been on a fairly low paleo style diet before the holidays and lost about, I think it was 5 or 6 kilos. And then after or during the, we'll say Thanksgiving to Christmas period, gained about 10 or 11 or so pounds back, 5 kilos. And now that she's back on a low carb style diet, she's not able to lose the weight again in the same way. So she's asking, is her metabolism been lowered, or has her metabolism been lowered? And I would say absolutely. And she's almost more resistant now to the lower carb because her body, I would say, is more reluctant to start to oxidize and burn body fat as a fuel when it feels it's more in that survival-based mode. So one of the best things is you got to get that metabolism rev back up, which means you have to make sure you're not nutrient deficient. So make sure you're really loading up on a lot of vegetables. You're getting in a lot of minerals. I would definitely recommend 1 smoothie, potentially 2 smoothies per day. I wouldn't do the lower calorie depletion. You can start to do intermittent fast or shake fast days or detox after we get that metabolism back. I would certainly do 1 cheat meal per week, potentially 2. Now you might not gain or lose any weight for a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks, but we need to get that body back up, make sure we restore leptin and ghrelin based hormone levels so the body feels comfortable again then burning body fat. So over a 2-3 week period, you should be able to restore those hormone levels and then go back to some days that are a little bit lower carb. No need to restrict right away. Get to a point where you're losing 1 to 2 pounds per week, 1 kilo equaling 2.2 pounds. So in whatever language you're talking, you can specifically talk in that language. And that's what I would look for. Again, 1% of body fat loss per week. But keep in mind, you cannot do low carb every single day, whether you're calling it ketogenic, paleo, whatever, and then expect to be able to eat carbohydrates again in your body not to just gain weight. So what I recommend is you finding out your carbohydrate tolerance, which we've talked about before, and then also making sure that you do have 1 cheat meal per week minimum, typically just 1 is good enough, where you're adding in carbohydrates to that cheat meal so that your body's like, oh good, we're getting carbohydrates, we're replenishing glycogen levels, and the body's not starving. For a lot of people that makes a huge difference. And again, like, yes, this is research-based, but it's also practice-based. I mean, we do 20,000 client sessions a year. We have the data, we know it works. Feel free to toy around with the research or not. This is what works. Listen to it now or listen to it 10 years from now, 20 years from now, when it's completely validated across all studies. But again, low carbs works great for a certain period of time, and then you have to increase the carbohydrates to your carbohydrate-based tolerance. And again, just listen to previous podcasts as well, where I talk about if you're carbohydrate sensitive, when to eat those carbohydrates, like after a workout, those specific things. Hopefully that answers your question, Maria. We'll be back real soon answering your questions on Cabral House Call.